Welcome to Sweet Tea Ethics, the show pouring life lessons and conversations with creatives, artists, and cultural producers about the ways harmonious living and balanced well-being have shaped it. I'm your host, Dr. Ed Garnes. Make sure you subscribe to the show, join our mailing list, and visit sweetteaethics.com. This is the D'Angelo joint. The great orator, scholar, educator, and African-centered theologian, Dr. Daniel Black often reminds us that if the Black church has taught us anything, it is ritual. To this vein, we find ourselves struggling with our collective grief for Soul Messiah D'Angelo, grasping for ritual to allay our burden of loss. And any mourning that does not include a God or gods that look like you is woefully insufficient. D'Angelo anointed the keys, testified on guitar, and the brother preached in falsetto. His sonics, much like his soul, had been through something, and he conveyed divine directives from ancestors with our best interests at heart. His Yodas, which included James Brown, George Clinton, Prince, Sly and the Family Stone, sent spiritual emails that often summoned him to the land of Stankonia by baptizing him in a funk that defies human understanding. A reluctant hero at times, he knew the best antidote to a system that forecasts your demise is keeping that pocket tight and jamming on the one. It may be too early for elaborate scholarly 25-word think pieces because we truly have yet to grasp the impact of his sojourn, as he bore witness and hosted history simultaneously. I suggest we prepare the altars with chicken grease, brown sugar, and the roots. Let it simmer and wait. Just wait for the drumbeat to remind us of our African home. Peace and good old Sweet Tea Ethics. Now, in these perilous times, right, you kind of need someone to speak to the radical resiliency in the Black community anchored in an abiding faith, okay? You need somebody who can touch a Bible and give you some grief work. We have the Reverend, soon-to-be Dr. Mashaun D. Simon in the house. Now, let me tell you about Mashaun. Not only does he specialize in Sweet Tea Ethics, but he is the former pastor of the House of Mercy Everlasting, also known as Home. What I'm really intrigued about, and one of the reasons that I gave him this invitation, is Project Joshua. It is about grief and wellness for the LGBTQIA plus community. Now, you have seen his byline in the AJC, Black Enterprise. You have seen him in Ebony Magazine. I've known Mashaun so long, we used to have to turn in clips that we would have to cut out from the newspaper. Okay, like we've been down since it got digital. All right. Now, if anybody knows how hard it was to turn in clips back in the day, that's how long this brother has been writing. He has a master's degree. He went to the Canada Theological Seminary and had professors like Reverend Dr. Gregory Ellison. All right. He also has had several fellowships. He has had a fellowship with the CNP, the Counter Narrative Project, where we both serve on the board. But what I was most intrigued about, he was a 2022 Do Good Startup Accelerator Fellow. I had to really read that one because that was a mouthful. So welcome to Sweet Tea Ethics, my brother. We're going to pour these libations and these conversations, but I'm happy to have you. So I wanted to just dive in this space where we often, as Black folks, do not talk about grief. I mean, we don't even talk about healing. Like, mental health still has that stigma to it. So when I heard about Project Joshua, and it's Black centered, African centered grief, but being inclusionary to people that are excluded. Because being on the margins is a different kind of identity stress. So talk about the impetus for Project Joshua and why you want to enter the grief space for Black folk.
Well, first, thank you, sir, for inviting me to be a part of this experience and for the ways in which you have always affirmed me and celebrated me. Like, yeah, we've known each other, what, 20 something years at this
Yeah, it's
point.
got to be
Um,
20 something because when we was doing those clips from the newspaper, that was early. That was early
Listen,
in the game.
I started out when we were still printing out our news articles and pasting them to the board to send to the
Yes.
printer. Like that that is where I came up in the journalistic world. We you talk about digital and all that. Like we were still doing it the old school black press way. So it's been quite a journey to say the least. But to get to your question,
Mhm.
um, Project Joshua came to be in the midst of this academic journey.
Okay.
So, as you mentioned, I am a soon-to-be doctor. I'm doing a Doctor of Ministry program at Columbia Theological Seminary, and I started this research just because I felt as though there was a personal ministerial need.
Okay.
For those who know me, know my story, my god brother, who was also my pastor, was battling colorectal cancer, and about a year before he died, he invited me to be the assistant pastor of House of Mercy Everlasting. And about 6 or 7 months before he died, um, I was officially named. It was in the midst of the pandemic, so this is like spring 2020. I was publicly and officially named assistant pastor of home. And then his recovery took a turn,
Mm.
and in our final conversations before he transitioned, he, asked me to continue his ministry. He asked me to be his successor. And I knew immediately that in order to do that work, in order to take over that ministry and lead it forward, um, I knew I wasn't equipped for it. Like that, I felt as though there was something more that was needed. And so I enrolled in this program most specifically because I recognized that I had been looking for books on the topic of how to carry on a ministry after a leader has either left or died or what have you. Like, how do you transition a congregation in that manner? And I couldn't find any. I think I
Mhm.
found like one book that had like a chapter in it. And I found like one article that talked about how this man took over this church after they got rid of him for accusations around like sexual assault. So I was
Mhm.
like, how, like, I know personally or have heard of many black pastors that have taken over churches after the previous pastor died. In many of those instances, the pastor who died was like the father or the grandfather to the successor. But I was
Mhm.
like, this has happened so many times. You cannot tell me that there is no literature out here to provide this kind of support and care. So that's where it started. I enrolled in this program because I was clear that there needed to be some type of manual. I got my acceptance to the program August 19th, 2020. Um,
Man,
or
it's
was it
going on four,
it
four
yeah,
years.
it's been a while since I've been in this program. Like to the fact that I'm almost done. So yeah, it's been 4 years. Um, somewhere August something like August 19th or August 20th, 2020. The very next day, he died. The very next day, he took his last breath, and I was shook. So that's where it started. It started from how do you transition a ministry after its leader, founder, um, whatever senior pastor has transitioned. And
And say
then
Brother Pierre's name for the people, so they will
um,
look him up.
Pierre D. Cox was the senior pastor of House of Mercy Everlasting, my dear friend and god brother, and best friend for all intents and purposes. Um, and so that's where it started. What started happening after that was as I was starting this program and starting this research and engaging these concepts and these ideas as it pertains to grief in the church, if you will, um, people kept coming to me as they were losing loved ones. And the majority of them were Black and queer, who were members of other churches, but were not going to their pastors to get any guidance or support. Some of them were family members. You and Maisha, like there were all these people who kept coming to me, and I kept asking the question, what is this? Like, what does this mean? What does it mean that these people are seeking um, guidance and support and care, and they're not getting it from the places where I felt as though they should be getting it? And then the next year, my father died. And when my father died, as you know, I went through this journey myself of trying to like make sense of a few things.
Oh
And one
yeah.
of the things that I realized in the midst of that experience or the midst of that process was everything that I had done, thinking that that was like the responsible thing to do, the responsible things to say to people when they had lost someone, I was annoyed with it when people were doing it to me. And I was like, so you mean to tell me this shit don't work? Like you so I have been going around here saying all this stuff, all
Yeah.
this asinine stuff, thinking that, this was a responsible thing to do. This was a responsible thing to say. I'm praying for you. Trust the scriptures. This is all in God's plan. And then when it got turned around on me, I was like, this is trash.
In the
Um,
by you'll get healing. You know,
listen,
it's like for you, I'm glad that you were able to admit that in such a refreshing way. The fact that you emphasize it with a cuss word is even better.
yeah,
But
I realize that.
how
Sorry, I do
how
that every
do
now
we
and again.
sit how do we sit in this space? Because I, as a therapist, am always reconciling grief just for Black folks. And then when you throw on faith, like it gets real muddy. Because if y'all don't know, even though I grew up in the church, I have heathen proclivities. So you know that brother Mashaun takes them all because I actually spoke at his church. So that tells you that anyone can be redeemed. But
Lord have mercy.
sitting in that space where healing is already hard,
Yeah,
then you have the grief, and
yeah,
then you're trying to reconcile matching up your grief with scripture, and it doesn't actually fit
yeah,
because if you look at healing from an African centered perspective, the Bible kind of is, it has some issues. So talk
yeah.
about that reconciliation process, especially for Black people already struggling with mental health. Because for me, and I don't know how you feel about grief, grief is a gut check to see where your mental health is. A lot of Black folks' first mental health check-in is when they've lost somebody, when that
Yeah,
grief
yeah,
comes down. So
yeah.
talk about that murky waters of navigating grief, and then you throw on this faith component, and it feels like it's not enough.
So the work that I have been done has helped me do a few things. One of them being that it has expanded my understanding of grief.
All right.
And so grief isn't just the loss we experience when someone dies. Grief is any form of loss, any form of adjustment, any form of unexpectedness, if you will. It's when a relationship with friendships change, there's grief there. When you lose a job, there's grief there. Losing money, grief there. Losing a house, grief there. Like grief is so much more than just death, and yet we focus solely just on the death component to it, which then robs us of so many different things. It robs us of the ability to take a moment and be human, um, because we just sort of see these other pieces as that just sort of happens, we move on, and so then that was one part. It helped me to expand my understanding of grief. The second part to it is it then taught me that when it comes to the grieving process, there is no quick fix, one. But then grief or loss can become an opportunity if we allow it to be an opportunity.
All
And what
right.
I mean by that is, as I was walking with the individuals that I had been walking with while also doing this research, um, I recognized the ways in which the grief was changing us. Um, Even though we wanted the pain to be over, if you will, there was something about the losses that had changed us. It had changed our perspectives on life. It changed our understanding of ourselves. I had one friend that he lost his husband, and he got like a almost a $200,000 life insurance policy check, and so it changed his social economic status. And so there were these changes that were happening, and it led me to consider what would happen if we approached loss from it being as detrimental as it is, because it is painful, it is hard, it does hurt, but that there are lessons that we can learn from the loss. There are opportunities that we can get from this loss. What would happen if we leaned there? And so the lens, I started engaging it from that lens. I started looking at scripture from that lens. I started looking at the story of Joshua, and how Joshua took over the people after Moses died, and they sat for 30 days and mourned, and then they moved to the next. They moved into the promised land. I started looking at the story of Job and how Job's anger towards God, Job's anger towards God, and Job's questioning towards God, his friends had looked down upon, but God had engaged Job. God was engaging Job in this conversation. And while the friends were saying, no, don't do that, God never said, how well, God does say, how dare you, but God says, how dare you, in a certain kind of way that gives Job perspective. And then Job never gets any answers from God. Job just gets perspective. And so it started influencing how I was approaching the work that I want to do around grief, that grief becomes a journey. There is no quick fix to it. There are no simple sentences or no easy phrases or no easy words. There is no one scripture that you can throw at somebody and it just be the thing that heals them. It becomes a process. It becomes a process of overcoming, of dealing, of getting used to that thing that no longer is, and then becomes an opportunity, if we allow it to become stronger and freer and more confident and more aware of ourselves and the world around us. Again, if we allow it to.
I'm hearing a little bit of identity congruence is necessary to get through grief, but I'm also hearing adaptive possibility.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
what you're doing is so much therapeutic. It's so much in the healing domain. Where does this natural affinity to approach things from a deeply psychological level that is also that is often missing from the Black church? Because
Mm,
you normally make a separation. You got your Jesus, Black Jesus over here, or white Jesus, whoever Jesus you like. But you got your faith over here, and then your mental health over here, but they
yeah.
never dancing with each other. But what you are doing, I mean, it's so much counseling, psychology, Black psychology in there. I'm hearing improvisation, resiliency, connectedness to others. I hear the spirituality that is the psychological strength.
Mm.
Where does this natural therapeutic flow come from, bro?
I have no idea, because if
Because
people really knew me,
you do it better than most therapists now.
most people know me know that I don't like people. So that's where it starts. I struggle with people. I have, as you know, I've done a lot of work. I spend a lot of time doing my own self introspection. I attempt. I developed this idea years ago that the best way for me to be me is to be aware of me. In order to know, in order to not cause harm to other, I need to be fully aware of the things that I am doing and I'm not doing. And so it led me to, one, study myself, but two, study people. What a lot of people don't know is that when I was an undergrad, and in high school, in my senior year of high school, I was taking psychology and sociology courses. When
So,
I got to undergrad, my minor was sociology, and I loved psychology courses. So I started studying people, not knowing that eventually I would end up in ministry. Like ministry was never an idea, it was never a thought, it was never a desire, it was never a hope. I didn't even come from a family of at that point. I didn't think that I came from a family of ministers. I have since now found out that my uncle who passed recently pastored a church. I had no clue that my uncle pastored a church.
there
Um,
was a short, now wearing glasses doctor that kind of told you or kind of guided you
I don't know who
that,
you're talking about.
that you were a prophet and didn't know it, and
I don't know who you're talking
that
about.
if you went over to the realm of faith, that you would find your liberation. I don't know who that is,
I don't
but
know who you're talking about.
I remember someone giving you a nudge in that area.
Oh, when did I meet Edna from The Incredibles? What are you talking about?
I
Short
saw
with
it.
glasses. Who are you talking about?
But you know what I saw is that there's such a deep humility in which you traverse this world that great healers have, that natural affinity to help people to develop coping strategies. I think that therapists are called. And
Mm.
so I think healers are called. And
You know,
I saw that very early because Mashaun and I both were trying to transition out of
yeah,
journalism to something. We didn't know what it was gonna be. I went
no
back to
clue.
psych since I already had the masters, but we were trying to figure it out. But
Hmm.
I just saw that light, like a old church mother. When you walk, it's just something anointed about this. But
Not the
why it
old church woman.
but yeah, but this is why it spoke to me, Mashaun. The black church became very off-putting for me. But
Yeah,
with you, I felt like I could have those dangerous, muddy, I would get popped in the back with a church fan if I asked type of
yeah,
question.
yeah.
So how did you start to lean into this calling when, like you said, it was not on your radar? You were not really looking at it, but
It
with some
you know
judges and your own introspection, I think you kind of landed there. So talk about
it
that process.
something you saying that just reminded me of something that I saw or read recently that when I read it, I had the revelation that it made the most sense to me. And it said that there are some of us who become the thing which we did not get when we were young.
Oh,
So some of us become the kind of spouse, we become the kind of parent. No, some of us become the kind of parent
tears.
that we didn't get when we were a kid. Some of us become the kind of spouse that we didn't get from our first relationship. And I think that is a part of it. I think I was a kid who was very independent in a lot of ways, and I became independent because my parents were dealing with stuff that they didn't realize I knew they were dealing with. I was watching my parents do the best that they could and filling the void myself.
Mm,
When I got older and I started engaging the church wasn't good to me. When I came out very young, I was still in high school when I became courageous enough to come into my own truth. Um, I I I was in my senior year of high school when I started very much saying, "This is who I am and how I am in the world." And then in my first year of undergrad, I I wrote an essay about it in a teen newspaper that I used to write for called Vox Youth Communications. And so I wasn't handled well by the church.
mm,
And I couldn't understand, like it made no sense to me. It was odd to me, like how can you have spent much of my developmental years telling me this is who God is to me, this is who Jesus is to me? Nothing can separate me from the love of God and the love of Jesus. And then the moment I come out, all of that changes. Like none of that made sense to me. Um, I got to this point before I went to seminary. I don't know if you know this story, but I ended up going to seminary because I was having these very internal revelations. I would be sitting in church
mm.
at the time I was visiting this church with this guy I was dating. And I listened to this pastor preach for 30, 45 minutes. And the entire time he preached, I was like, he's wrong. Like had never had never engaged scripture, had never, but something in my spirit was like, he's wrong. Like he's way off. This is not it. And then I went back to the church that I was a member of. I had just recently joined. We were in a new members class, and the teacher asked the question, what is the most important thing about Jesus? And earlier that morning, I had been telling a friend of mine that this idea had been dancing around in my head about the real Jesus, and that what we had been given about Jesus wasn't the authentic story because they had chosen to take things away. And I had said
Okay.
to my friend, I said, it's just like how our parents do. Like our parents don't want us to know something, so they withhold information. They withhold something. I was like, but there's something about Jesus that we've been given a certain narrative. And I had that perspective because I was a writer. So I understand that those who control the narrative control history.
Oh yeah.
And so we were sitting in this class, and this woman asked that question, and people were saying, he's the son of God, and she was like, no, that's not the most important thing. And they were like, he performed miracles, and she was like, no. And my friend nudged me. His name was Robert Jones. He nudged me, and he was like, tell her what you were talking about this morning. And I was like, doing that? You even have these people here looking at me like I'm crazy.
You want
And
me
he
to
was
get
like,
out the church? I just got it.
I just joined this church. And so he was like, say it, say it. And she was like, what? Say what? She heard us. And I said that he was human. And she said, that is the most important thing about Jesus, that he was human. She came to me later and she said, you need to go to seminary. Like in that, she was like, the way in which your spirit works, the way in which your mind works. She was like, you need to go to seminary. You need to study this. You have a call of revealing things. And that is what started the whole thing for me. And so I don't know, like
Prophecy is in you. Okay.
it just was a thing. Like the things just made sense to me. The things made sense in my mind. They made sense in my spirit. The stuff that I had been told and taught, I could see the contradictions. I could and felt comfortable enough to say there's something more here, there's something missing. It is what started the process for me. It is what started the journey of eventually getting to this point. But only reason why I went to seminary is because I wanted to prove everybody wrong. Like I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like this is not the space I'm supposed to be in. Let's go. Let's see what happens. And then I can do something else when I come out, go back to journalism, what have you.
I mean, it's so revolutionary. It's like a beautiful struggle for me because I knew if you got in that domain that you would change things. You know,
Mm,
we need individuals because even though I identify, as a heterosexual black man. I am other. You know what I'm saying? I am other
yeah,
all of the time. And
yeah.
so for us others, I knew that you could be a beacon of hope, even when I couldn't articulate it. I think I saw that prophetic word that you could be a beacon of hope for us renegades, the heathens, the people that have been forgotten about. But I've
Damn
always,
heathens.
and I don't know if I've ever shared this story. So you are getting me to share because we match energy on Sweet Tea Ethics.
Come
So
on, sweet tea
yeah,
exclusives.
yeah, Sweet Tea exclusives. Now, one of the things that turned me away from the black church was an experience that I had in college, right? I had formed an organization on college. It was white students, independent white students that were non-Greek. It was black students, Latino students. We were all working together. We also this how old we are. It was only L and G, okay? So we had the LG
The
community at
the
that
gay
time.
the gay
So
lesbian alliance.
yeah, yeah. So
I
it
remember
was one of
those.
those, right?
I remember those.
And so, okay, so that's how all this was, right? And so my mentor, black man I looked up to, when I started working with black people that did not identify as heterosexual, he told me to stop or he was not going to support me.
Mhm.
And then guess what he did? He turned the entire Black community and used faith in the Bible and me being a heathen as
Mhm.
the reason that I was not worthy of redemption.
Yeah, sounds about
I
right.
don't think I think I stopped pressing my suit and going to church after that incident.
Sounds
So
about right.
I'm sure that my story and what I went through, I'm about to cry just talking about it. See, I ain't never shared this, Mashaun. You got me in the sharing chair. You supposed to be
Hey,
in the sharing
listen,
chair.
this a healing
Okay.
space. This a healing
You
space. If
prophecy
you
just jumped all over me.
if you
So
calling me
this
a healer, then that's what we here for.
but that experience, Brother Mashaun, is what I hear so much from my clients. Like the othering,
Yeah,
the I was too poor for this church, or they said that my wife couldn't come in the church with me. They said I couldn't wear pants. They
yeah.
said that my hair was too long as a Black man. They said I couldn't do this. So talk about creating a space in the church, right? That is different from this heteronormative narrative that we have of faith,
Mm-hmm.
and then becoming this beacon of hope to welcome people that have such tragic stories. I mean, because really it's a traumatic story. Because I
Yeah.
almost just leaped up, the tears just almost leaped up talking about this. Because here's a leader in the church willing to turn the Black community against me because I want to support my at the time LG family.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and really thought I was gonna stop. I mean,
Yeah.
basically like threatened me.
Yeah.
And I refused to stop. So
You
talk
know,
about that.
it's so this is where we get into the ideas around what Project Joshua is capable of doing.
Do it.
I am not interested in creating space at a place that should have already been a space. So I my work
Can we get
is
that get that good word one more time? One more time. Say that one more time.
I am not interested in creating a space in a space that already should have been a safe space. Um, what could potentially be the outcome of my work and my research is that churches figure out the best way to atone for the harms that they have committed if they are interested in that. So that means me potentially coming in and being a consultant or leading talks or what have you in church spaces. But Project Joshua is not interested in creating safe space inside the church because the church
Do
itself, the Church Universal, is an institution that is committed to its own survival. I'm not interested in the church surviving. I am
it.
interested in providing survival components and space and care for God's people. And I don't necessarily need to do that in the church. And so Project Joshua has these goals that I have sort of been dancing with as I'm. So the other part is Project Joshua is still very much in its infancy phase. I had, when you talk about Do Good X, I enrolled in Do Good X at the time because I was trying to make sense of what could potentially what could potentially be the outcome of my research. Because I didn't just want to go to school, get the degree, and then do nothing. And so Project Joshua became an idea that was a part of a conversation around what am I trying to do with this when I'm done? And Do Good X just sort of came along when it came along. And it helped me to take time to sit and really think about what the possibilities are. And so I've been sort of seeking and discerning in what ways does Project Joshua become its own entity, but I can't do anything with that until I'm done with a degree because the degree program becomes what Project Joshua I hope to be. And so that could potentially look like several different things. It could look like grief retreats. It could look like a community center. It could look like mixing physical health, like working out with through a grief lens. It could be in what ways can sound therapy assist us in the process of dealing with our grief. It could be what can candle making and what role can candle making have in the process of dealing with our grief. And so I'm seeking to discern all of those things. But what I realized in the midst of that is I cannot focus my energy on putting Project Joshua in a church, because it would then limit it entirely too much. I don't know if there is a church that exists right now that will be ready to do all the things that I think Project Joshua could potentially do. And again,
Okay.
the Church Universal is committed to its survival. It's committed to recruiting members. It's committed to then putting those people to work so that then the church survives. It's committed to them bringing their tithes and their offerings into the space. And I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in how do we help people journey through a process. And I can't be distracted in the church or by the church. But there are ways that I could potentially support what the church may be doing. So if there's a church that has a grief ministry, in what ways can I come in and provide insight and perspective for them as it pertains most specifically to Black queer individuals that are grieving? So my final project looks at what role has church hurt played in the grieving process for Black queer individuals? How has church hurt either hindered them, or how has the church hurt caused them to seek grief care and support from other communities because the church hasn't always been a safe space for them?
No, I counsel a lot of those individuals, and I don't want to say it's a hot topic, but I think it's a necessary topic because what I see when we were on the pandemic, we had time to be with ourselves.
Yep.
Being with ourselves, we realized that there were some things in the traditional aspect of faith and Christianity that were very limiting to our
Yep.
liberation.
Yep.
But I'm glad that you made that distinction because, one of the things that I do appreciate about you, you are really a philosopher. Like if you follow Mashaun's social media, Mashaun will write a post, and I have to go to like 3 different Black psychology books to figure out what this man has said. And it could be so simple, but I mean, like you are a philosopher, and like I get inspired by brothers like you because you keep me on my toes. And then, counseling people and going through my own grief. I
Mhm.
don't know. You just have this uncanny ability to just speak to what I'm dealing with. One day you wrote a post, I was like, okay, come on, Sean.
I'm not fooling
Like,
with you. I'm not
oh,
fooling with
man,
you today.
grieve my daddy. Come on, Mashaun. But
But it is
I
all born out of my own experiences. It's born out of my
yeah,
own process. It's born
that's
out
why
of
it is.
the questions that I have, the contradictions that I see, and I can't help it. Like I just sit and I'd be like, "Whew, I got to get this out. I got to say something."
Love it though. I
Um,
love it though. I love
but I
because it keeps
always want to be thoughtful about what I'm saying and what I'm putting out. Like I don't want to just put trash out there to add to the noise. I want to present things that I am considering and thinking about, because somebody told me a long time ago that the preaching moment is not just when you get up in the pulpit and preach. The preaching moment is how people see you and engage you in your everyday walk. And I do recognize that I am a preacher. I am a homiletician. And so my posts are preaching moments. My social media engagement are preaching moments. And so I give a lot of thought to what I put out.
yeah, the academy would call it Socratic questioning. Okay, that's what
It that is what the Academy would call it.
what all white psychology that is taught would say. Now, if you come on over to the Black hand psychological side, we would call those consciousness raising questions. And these consciousness raising questions is why you have an invite to the sweet tea table.
I don't like you sometimes.
I mean, but you have to think about this. If you write a post and it raises consciousness, that's what is needed with the Black community. And
Yeah.
speaking of raising of consciousness, we had something that was very problematic for me that I want to throw on the table that, all folks ain't kin folks. And the reason, if you wonder why is sweet tea ethics necessary, because we talk about things like identity congruence. And if you have identity congruence, you will be an organization, unlike NABJ, that would understand what invitations don't need to happen.
Mm.
So, since we will pull from our journalism hats today, what are your thoughts on that? Because I actually, when people started hitting me, I thought it was a joke. Like
Mm.
I was waiting for somebody to say, "Gotcha, Negro," and I kept getting it. I was like,
That wasn't
"This
no
is
joke.
not." So, tell me about how an organization that was supposed to be committed to the liberation struggle of journalists being locked out of opportunity. Mashaun and I could share so many stories where we have been the sharpest cats in the room, didn't get the editor position, or we didn't get this position, and we are top-notch journalists to our core. This organization fought for us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think about people like Ida B. Wells. What is she doing when they make this kind of thing? So what was your feeling? Mine reeks of disappointment, and I don't think that the organization will ever recover from appealing to masses that are already forecasted our demise. So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts, ABJ, in the invitation to a person that we don't even have to say their name, but everyone knows what we're talking about?
It's funny because I took a hard stance a few years ago that I wouldn't even write if I could help it. I wouldn't even write that name in
Exactly.
the work
You
I
need
was doing.
mm-hmm.
Like I would say, like the 45th president of the United States,
Yeah.
or what have you, or like. So anyway, how much time do we have? I
We have time to get into this because I think a healing has to happen. Let them use you.
So this is where the duality of my mind comes into play, like the graciousness of me and the philosopher of me.
Okay.
The pastoral heart and the and the pastoral heart, like both come into play.
Help me because I'm petty Eddie on this one. So help me.
So there is a part of me that is incredibly petty about it. Like
Okay. Okay.
it, it I have been sort of removed from NABJ for quite a while, and part of the reason why I removed myself from NABJ was when I made it known that I was going into the ministerial space. There were two things I knew. One, um, journalists are taught to be unbiased and fair in their reporting. But I knew going into the ministerial space, I was going to have to be opinionated about things. Like as a preacher, especially when you are in the pulpit, there are opinions that are expressed and positions and perspectives that are expressed. And so I couldn't figure out how to, at that time, be the reporter that people were calling me to be and still be authentic to where I knew I was going. The second part was I also knew that Black folk are pretty conservative. And I knew that there were going to be several people within the organization's ranks who, when they found out I was going into ministry, and mind you, I was the first ever openly gay student representative on NABJ's national board
I
in
remember
its
that was
history.
doing the dreadlock Mashaun years, wasn't it? When
Yeah,
you was
yep. That was then. That was the dreadlock scandal with Black Enterprise. And so I knew that when it became known that I was going into ministry, there were going to be some people who would have questions and objections and wouldn't be very supportive. And so NABJ no longer felt like the safe space it once was. And so I removed myself. So all of that has to do with why I've been so distant from them for the past decade now, if you will. I understand the arguments that this president of NABJ is making. Yes, it is the history of this organization to invite all the presidential candidates to a convention to address the members and to engage questions because this is a journalism organization. Yes, I get it. I hear you. I understand that tradition. And I do think it is important. I do also think that times have changed and what journalism used to be and the rules and responsibilities that we once held around being fair and balanced and unbiased don't really exist anymore the way in which they used to. And especially when it comes down to those of us who tend to be at the lowest level of the totem pole and the fewest in the room, i.e., minorities, people of color, et cetera, et cetera. There's a different level of expectation placed upon us when we are in certain spaces. So yes, I agree with you. NABJ was founded to be a safe space for us because the other places in which it's the same. I equate NABJ with the history of the Black church. The Black church, when it was founded, was designed to be a space of safety for enslaved Africans. It was designed to be a space where people for the first time had leadership roles. It was designed to be a space where people for the first time were called Mr. and Mrs. instead of boy and girl. It was the safe space for our community, and it has lost its way. And I feel like NABJ has done a similar thing. I think by telling that candidate that they would be welcome in this space, I think it was a headline grab for its leadership because yes, it is what they did. It is what NABJ has done traditionally. But at the same time, both and NABJ is supposed to be a certain kind of environment for its people and its membership. I'm struggling. I'm struggling to make sense of why would you then create chaos in a place that was supposed to be safe. I'm struggling with why would you then invite an individual who has attacked especially Black women journalists in a way that has been damaging to them, impactful to their careers. Why would you then the decision and then to create an all Black woman panel when you already know this man has no respect for Black women? The pastor in me can't understand.
Yeah.
Like, there's a part of me that has grace for this is tradition, this is what we've done. But the way in which it was presented felt sneaky. Like, the fact that this was announced the day before the convention was supposed to start felt sneaky. And then
Also,
it
also
later
feel
came out that
pocket padding.
because I don't think they got no money off of this. Like the way
That's
in
even
which
more.
the way in which I know NABJ operates, they ain't get no money off of this. Like technically they can't. Like
That's
they
why.
would
That's
lose
why
their.
I asked you, because I am far removed. I've never been a member. I've never attended. So I
Yeah,
know that I.
they could potentially lose their nonprofit status.
Okay.
Um, if the Republican Party had come in as a sponsor, that is one thing compared
Okay.
to if money had just been given for this
So tell me where
individual to
you're
show
going,
up.
because I introduced the money, but you were going. You were taking us somewhere else.
Oh, and I was going to say, and then it has later come out that you know the Harris campaign was attempting to make these concessions so that there could still be a level of presence, and the leadership declined them all. Like that 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 is very telling to me. Like this
Yes.
I think there was a desire. I think the argument that this is what we've always done, this is tradition, we would be irresponsible journalists if we had not. I think all of that was a cover for a leadership who said this is our opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to make headlines. This is an opportunity for us to get our name out there and to be and for the rest of the world to know and see us and hear about us who would have never known about us before and to take us serious in a different kind of way. And it backfired because a good portion of the membership are upset and hurt and frustrated. There's a good number of membership who are calling for their resignation. And there is an election year coming for this organization. And I'm pretty sure that there are going to be some people who stand up and say, I'm running against these people
Right.
because they did this. And so it didn't, I don't think it, and I would also add, it's still in the news. So like people are still reporting about what that man did at NABJ's convention. And
Yeah.
it's not the best media. And so
And
it
that's
I
why
don't
I brought it up. Mhm.
it
It's
it is
still going. I thought the news cycle would run out on it, but it's still
and it
going.
hasn't. It hasn't. And so I don't think I think that it was a grab. I don't think it was a money grab, but I do think it was a grab to say this is who we are. And a part of me feels as though it's about the white gaze. It's about being affirmed. And most specifically this leadership. Like I try my best not to operate off of gossip, but there are things that I've heard from people who are still active about these current leaders,
Mhm.
and how these current leaders operate, that have also helped me to consider that this was about being about um, ego and being in self-service and attempting to
Individual,
yeah,
individualism to its core, the collective spirit is out of it. And
yeah.
the larger implications I want to speak to too, because you know, you usher in the death of tradition. I think going back to what you were saying about I'm not gonna put a safe place in a space that should have already had a safe space. So beyond just NABJ, what are some things black folks we got to let go of? The traditions that got
Mm,
to die. What
mm.
traditions got to die
I
for
don't
future
know if I don't know
generations?
if traditions have to die. I think
Okay.
traditions have to be um I think they need to be expanded. Um and I would say that because of this, like just recently my husband and I were watching this cooking competition that apparently aired like back in 2021, but we had never seen it. And it was a soul food cooking competition that
Oh,
apparently premiered on OWN years ago.
you took up my
Um,
fancy with the soul food. I'm like, not in a
all of the
fancy
con-
called.
all of the contestants were black. All of the judges were black. It was a celebration of blackness and black soul food. And in watching that show, it reminded me like there was an episode where they brought out grandmothers. It was a baking episode, and they brought out grandmothers. And these contestants got to bake alongside these grandmothers, and they
Oh,
talked about their secret ingredients and how they kept their family going and what it's been like. And one of the judges affirmed the grandmothers and was like, thank you for keeping our story alive, for keeping our food alive. And it helped me to consider that tradition can be damaging if we
okay.
allow it to be damaging, but tradition can also be life-giving because it helps us to continue telling the stories that would not normally get to be told, and to get and they be told from our perspective, and they be originated from us. And so I don't want to destroy tradition.
Uh-huh.
I want to expand tradition. I want us to stop and
Oh,
think about, why do we do this, and is it serving us? And if it's not serving us in the way in which it should, what adjustments should we be making to ensure that it continues to be life-giving for us, that it continues to provide for us perspective and understanding and respect and confidence and self-awareness, in the way in which that tradition was intended to do and has done and served us all this time. And so, yes, I am in a lot of ways a non-traditionalist, if you will. Even when I officiate weddings, like I don't do the who gives this person away piece, because I'm like, don't nobody belong to nobody. So what we giving away? But there are other parts of the ceremony that I do keep alive because I do understand what they mean to people, and I understand the role that it plays in the memory making moment, that becomes a part of a greater narrative. And so I just want us to adjust some of these traditions and
okay.
expand some of the traditions and see the ways in which we can still do this work, while not holding so strong to the portions of the traditions that are damaging to us and taking our lives away.
See, I'm gonna come over to your side because I was on death. Death becomes you tradition. I am, that's Petty Eddie. Kill it,
Kill it.
death.
Cut it off
Yeah.
at the neck.
But I do understand what you're saying about, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So I mean, I'm glad I will come over to your side and admit that you swayed me on that one.
We can just add a little more bubble bath to the bath water. That's all. Just freshen it up a little bit.
Yeah, so it's like the larger implications that I don't think people understand
Yeah.
is that when we play devil's advocate, we end up becoming the devil.
Yeah.
So it's like that devil advocate mentality in the black community. What if no, that's anti-black and it ain't got no liberation is in there. So let's just stop
And
doing it.
and I
And so
like playing devil's advocate sometimes, like because it makes people think.
yeah,
But I'm using it as a tool.
it's a lot more sophisticated, Mashaun. Like your devil's advocate, like you could say that was almost a devil's advocate strategy. I said kill it. You said, well, maybe we don't need to kill it. See, that's different than the foolishness that we see with these devil's advocates. It
You're
was
right.
still wrapped in black love. Okay.
You're right. You're right.
It's be talking about black love and all this good healing. I mean, this has freed me. You always come on the day I need it because my day to day was I didn't know. I didn't know if I was gonna get through this day.
Well,
So
same
what
here.
what would be on your healing playlist? Not limited to genre. You can discuss particular songs, or you could discuss artists
Mm,
that will fulfill the mission of being on your healing playlist.
that's a good question. That is a very good question.
Well,
Um,
you think about that. Go right ahead.
it would change. It would change day by day. It would change moment by moment. One of the first things that came to mind for me is I started baking in the pandemic. I'd never baked before in my life, except for maybe like a peach cobbler here or or a box of brownies there.
I say a brownie here.
And but in the midst of the pandemic, someone said to me, I lost my aunt at the top of the pandemic, April of the pandemic. And I was struggling to deal with that because this was an aunt who I had not seen in 30 years, who lived in Detroit. And I kept promising that I was going to come see her, and I never got a chance to. Um, and someone who is now becoming a friend told me that when she lost her mother, she started baking. Um, and so I started baking. I started taking recipes that my parents had made very popular and started testing it out to see what would happen. I tell that story because the what's coming to mind for me is when my father died, I stopped baking because baking, especially baking rum cakes, would remind me of him too much. And I like to listen to music when I'm doing stuff to keep me moving. And Daddy Lessons by Beyonce came on and I crumbled. Like I couldn't hold it. And that song never really impacted me before, but in that moment I was like, I can't do this. And so I changed it to the Hamilton soundtrack. And so
Mm,
now when I bake, I play the Hamilton soundtrack.
okay.
To the extent that I have another friend in Nashville, I would send her lyrics to a song and she'd be like, "You must be baking." And so the Hamilton soundtrack has become a source of healing. Um, I can listen to Daddy Lessons now every now and again. It may still choke me up, but if it does happen while I'm baking, turning on Hamilton sort of shifts me. So that's one something that serves as a form of healing on my playlist. But it's all kinds of songs. Like, I'll turn on some Brandy when I need it. I will turn on I would turn on gospel music. Israel Houghton, Your Presence is Heaven to Me is a song that comes to mind for me. Marvelous by Brother Hawkins is another song that comes to mind for me. Um, uh, Fantasia, Jennifer Hudson, Whitney, like the list goes on and on and on and on. Miranda Curtis, who's a gospel artist.
Okay.
But Hamilton probably is the one thing that popped in my head when you asked
And
me that question.
I would have never picked Hamilton, which is why we ask these questions.
Hamilton, it's a thing.
I did
It
not know that. You learn
it,
something new every day.
it gives it sets a mode. And you know it takes you on the journey. It takes you on this very interesting journey from beginning to end. It starts out um, very inspirational and very motivational. And then it goes through the twists and turns of his alleged life, and it ends in his death. But it's still very reflective. The music is very reflective. That can also be very motivational. And so, yeah, the Hamilton soundtrack.
I was supposed to close there, but I'm gonna ask you to give us in 1 minute as we as the doors of the non-traditional Joshua Project experience, right? As we close this thing on out,
Oh Lord.
what would you say to the people like me, the heathens, the people that ain't been to church since grandma died? What would you say to us to
Mm.
inspire us as Black people to lean back into our spirituality and our faith?
That's a good question. I think I would say that your relationship to the divine, whatever that looks like, is yours and yours alone. And let no one tell you what it does or does not need to look like. Don't let anyone tell you what prayer needs to look like. Let that thing be authentic to who you and how you are. For me, there are times when I have cussed God out because something was not right or fair, but that's my relationship to God. I am no longer. I have a great many friends who are still leading churches, and I have the greatest respect for them because I understand that that is what they are called to do. I understand that the church, universal, is a gathering place for people to obtain access to not only God, but others who they feel um, have a level of relatability with them. And so in no means do I want anyone to hear me say that I am anti-church. I am not. I have the highest respect for anyone who still attends church. If that's what you feel led to do, I support it. I have a list of churches that I trust.
All right.
That I'm like, if people are looking for a church home, these are the places in which I would suggest you go. Especially if you are Black and queer. But I do not believe that church is the be all end all. Church is not for everybody. And I think we have been conditioned to believe that. And when we are not at church, we shame is created as a result of that. So I want to free people from that shame. Like, you have the ability to be in relationship with God in whatever way makes the most sense to you, in whatever way feels the most authentic to you, it feels the safest for you. But allow yourself to have the kind of relationship with God that you need, that serves you, that feeds you, and that heals you.
Mm. You freed me. I almost threw a handkerchief at you right now.
I'm not fooling with you.
So where can they find you on social media, Mashaun? What
So I am on
engage in your fellowship?
you can find me at mashaunDsimon.com, MASHAUN, the letter DSIMON.com. That will also lead you to where you can find me on most social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now, TikTok, Instagram. I even have a YouTube page. I just don't use it that much. But MashaunDsimon.com will allow you to find all of my social media platforms.
Thank you for pouring sweet tea ethics with me, my brother.
Thank you,
Mashaun D.
sir.
Simon, if I had a choir, they would be clapping right now for you, my brother. But hey, this is the healing conversation that we all need. I appreciate
I
you,
appreciate you.
love you, and I see some chicken wings in our future.
Yes, we need to do that again. It's been a while.
Thank you for listening as we pour some good old sweet tea ethics. Hope this special brew was healing to your mind, body, and your soul. Subscribe to the show, join our mailing list, and visit sweetteaethics.com. Peace, love, and poppy seed oil to you all.